Good morning and welcome to this webinar on how to meet the new SEC rules with ISO 27001. My name is Alan Calder. I'm the Chief Executive of IT Governance in the USA and of the parent company in the UK. I'm the founder of the company, and I'm also an established author of books about cybersecurity and privacy. My book on implementing ISO 27001 is coming up for the issue of its 8th edition, which I think is due out in a month or two, and it's in the UK, the Open University's postgraduate textbook. So some 15 or 20 years worth of experience with helping organizations deploy ISO 27001 to achieve a wide range of cybersecurity and compliance objectives. We, as a business, IT Governance, have deep experience with ISO 27001. We have some 12,000 clients across 5 continents, 180 staff, many of them with many, many years of experience and lots of expertise in our consultants, trainers, and subject matter expertise, and probably the most comprehensive ISO 27001 product and service offering that you could hope to find. All of that sits within the AIM-listed GRC International, but IT Governance is the real trading business in the US, the EU, and the UK, where we offer to clients the expertise, that 20 years of expertise that helps our clients have the peace of mind that goes with an effective cybersecurity management system. 1,300 projects helping organizations achieve ISO 27001 or maintain it having got there, 15,000 delegates through our various training courses, 7,000 Cyber Essentials certificates, over 2,000 people using our governance, risk and compliance software, and a slew of certifications and accreditations from third parties who recognize the quality of our service and that it's delivered to a minimum standard. And our clients think the same. 63 is our Net Promoter Score, which is approaching world class. Our Trustpilot rankings sit up in the excellent level, and those are kind of customer reflections of our commitment to high quality, consistent service delivered over time. Our agenda for today is to look at the alignment between ISO 27001, the international standard for information security, and the key requirements of the new SEC cybersecurity regulation, how you might use 27001 to meet those requirements, the incident response approach, particularly to that core requirements of the new SEC reg, and how CyberComply can help you integrate compliance strategies both with ISO 27001 and the SEC rules. You will have noticed that you are all on mute. That kind of deals with background noise, but I welcome questions. So please, if as we're going through this webinar you find that there's anything you want to ask, please do in the GoToWebinar dashboard that should be on the screen in front of you. There's a questions panel. If you open that, you can type a question into that. And when we come to the live Q&A, which will be in about 35 minutes or so, then I'll pick the questions out of the question box. I'll share the question with the audience and then I will answer it. In all, I'm expecting today's webinar will be about 45 minutes long, and answering the question, which tends to be the first one asked by most people. The webinar will be shared with everybody and the slides and recording will be made available within about the next day or so. So on that note, let me move into the content of the webinar itself, introduction to the SEC cybersecurity rules and why. And the why is because the tech stack is not the solution to today's cyber risks. And we picked 3 fairly recent breaches at random, each of which were organizations who spent millions of pounds on cybersecurity, and each of which had a substantial cyber breach. And that happens not because of an absence of investment in cybersecurity, but for a number of other reasons. And those start with the fact that the attack surface is expanding. The migration to cloud, the length, the extent to which people are working remotely, the hybrid work at home, all of those kinds of components, Internet of Things, all of the ways in which people can collaborate, the proliferation of applications, simply mean that the attack surface for attackers has got to be bigger and bigger and bigger. There are more and more ways in which an attacker can get into an organization. And at the same time, the threat horizon has got crowded. If you think of this as a head-up display, that's kind of what sat there coming for you in the way of cybersecurity threats, and add into that mix deep fakes, artificial intelligence, winding everything up and making it even more effective. And it all works because, of course, the issue isn't technology. The issue is us, human beings. We make errors. We send information to people we didn't mean to. We click on links that we should not have clicked on. We simply do our job slightly wrong. All of those errors, and particularly the social engineering errors, the tendency we have to click on links, to open emails, to do things that we probably shouldn't do, all of those are at the heart of why we have an ongoing cybersecurity problem. So as an organization, if you're thinking about how do I tackle the real problem without spending very large amounts of money on technology, but how do I reduce my profile? Well, you've got to think beyond the tech stack. So you've got to think about controls that deal not only with technology, the physical security, obviously, but all of the identification, authentication, logical access control. You need all of that, but you also need controls around people and around process. So you need people who understand, for instance, how a firewall should be configured. They're trained to do it, and you need a process which sets out what an adequate level of configuration is and how you test that. So the combination of people, process, and technology is where a sensible approach to cybersecurity lies. And that's key to the SEC regulation. And the SEC regulation you can think of as being a drive for organizations to build cyber defense in depth, to think about not simply one level of defense, but recognizing that you will be breached. And because you will be breached, you need to have multiple layers of defense, which can capture a breach at the second level or third level and mitigate at each of those levels. And at the heart of the idea of cyber resilience is the recognition that cyber and privacy risks are different sides of the same coin. If you have a cyber breach, almost certainly PII will be compromised. If you have a breach involving PII, it almost certainly occurred because of a cyber breach. So they kind of go together, and all of the regulatory entanglement that comes from a PII breach happens pretty well from any cyber breach. And the other thing to bear in mind is that confidentiality, integrity, and availability, those are the three cornerstones, the building blocks of an information security management system, and they're also the heart of ISO 27001 and what that international standard is focused on helping organizations put in place. So what does the SEC require? And many of you will be aware of this. The rules effectively standardize cybersecurity disclosure requirements for public companies, for investors, and for market participants. And there are two main components to it. The first is an annual disclosure of the board's cybersecurity risk management strategy and how it goes about governing cybersecurity, and the disclosure of material cybersecurity incidents from time to time as and when they happen. I note that this material has not yet fully defined. That's usually up to the filer, and the disclosure rules apply to domestic registrants and to foreign private issuers subject to the Securities Exchange Act of 1934. And of course, it's not just a law, there are regulatory penalties, and much more significantly, there are actions and class actions for corporate and personal negligence. And failing to disclose a material cybersecurity incident is a breach of the law. You've got a limited period of time to do that in. If you don't disclose it, that's a problem. If you disclose it and it turns out that actually you don't have proper risk management processes behind it, you have potentially a negligence suite. So how you go about dealing with that is quite important. And of course, the compliance deadlines have pretty well all passed. So the requirements to provide information about breaches has been in place since December the 15th, 2023. The requirement to make annual declarations about your cybersecurity governance has been in place since December 18, 2023 for organizations whose disclosure dates fall after that. So there's a rolling level of disclosure requirements. And from December this year, disclosures have to be in line XBRL. So there is more work to do to make sure you can do it technologically as well. So compliance deadlines there. Now, how to comply? Well, the requirement to disclose processes kind of implies that you've got some. And if you've got some processes, they need to be written down, they need to be communicated, they need to be enforced, because there's no point saying in your annual disclosure, we have a governance process, we have a cyber incident response process, and then you have a breach and somebody says, well, could you show it to me? You go, well, I haven't written it down. It has to be written down, communicated, enforced. That's kind of obvious. You can create your own, you can have your own set of documentation, very straightforward, lots of hard work required, room for error, cost, or you can deploy existing best practice. And deploying existing best practice is it's best practice, so you don't have to work it out for yourself. It's faster, it's less expensive, and it brings a whole bunch of benefits, not least in terms of reducing the cost of RFPs, information to clients, to stakeholders, being able to say, not only do we have we deployed a best practice information security framework, but we can prove it because we can have, and we have had, an external audit of that, and we've got a certificate that demonstrates compliance with it. So how do we comply? So I've talked about ISO 27001. I want to talk a bit about a couple of the key areas of alignment between what it as a standard says. And ISO 27001 you can buy for £200. It's a very minor, $200 is very minor cost. So aligning it with what the SEC says requires you to look at a couple of areas. First of all, SEC requirement, board and top management must have a functioning cybersecurity governance, risk management, and compliance framework. Okay, ISO 27001 mandates a board-led approach to cybersecurity built around a risk assessment, which encompasses the organization's assets and primary processes, mitigation of the identified risks, clear roles and responsibilities, and effective incident management. So that's a requirement of ISO 27001, the standard. An organization that implements it will be doing essentially what the SEC says must be in place. But you'll be following an international standard. So you're faced when you have a breach. Remember, breaches are kind of inescapable. You're able to go, well, we're not only doing something, but we didn't just make it up. We are applying a 20-year in development international standard to how we build our cybersecurity governance framework. The requirements in item 106 and 16K of each of those forms both require disclosures about cybersecurity risk management and strategy. And as I said, disclosures mean you've got to write it down, it's got to be clear, and ISO 27001 has a set of controls attached to it in its annex, which you can select from, and those controls deal with organization. You can think of those as broadly governance controls, people issues, physical controls, and technology controls, and a control is a mitigation for a risk. In the management standard itself, at clause A, at clause 6.1.2, it sets out the requirements around risk assessment and risk treatment. And that's a process which absolutely aligns with the SEC's requirement for a board-led approach to identifying and managing cyber risks. So ISO 27001 gives you a process that is internationally developed and is recognized as a way of dealing with that. So just picking up on a couple of other areas, the mandatory requirement from the SEC that material cybersecurity incidents have to be disclosed within a typically 4-day time frame. ISO 27001 in controls 524 to 530 all deal with each of the elements of identifying, planning for, and responding to information security incidents. So using ISO 27001, very good and practical way to demonstrate that what you've got in place meets the requirements of that regulation. I've selected a few controls here that look at very specific areas of, on the right-hand side, SEC requirements around specifically what it is that you've got to do to comply. And on the left-hand side, I've picked out the key controls. This is from ISO 27001 2022, which is the latest version of the standard. And I've picked out the controls which deal with cybersecurity governance, with risk management, with cybersecurity incident disclosure, and with strategy security generally, and there are some 99 odd controls in ISO 27001. So I've just picked out the ones which are most appropriate. And you don't have to implement all controls. ISO 27001 is built around the idea that the controls you implement are appropriate to the risks you've identified. So as I said, a solid set of controls, clearly documented how they should work, what the elements should be, that enables you to pick and match them to your identified risk and to demonstrate how you are meeting the requirements of the cybersecurity regulation. So how might you go about deploying that understanding, that insight into ISO 27001 into getting to the point where you can, hand on heart, go, we know that this is not an area of risk we need to worry about. We are compliant with the SEC's cybersecurity rule. ISO 27001 mandates organizations to systematically identify information security risks and identify their potential impacts. That aligns with the SEC's requirement to understand and disclose the cybersecurity risks that could materially affect your financial and operational stability. And of course, the reality that you can get a certification body to audit your compliance with ISO 27001. You can't do that with the cybersecurity reg, but you can with ISO 27001, and that independent audit is, in a sense, a real safe harbor against claims of negligence, because to find yourself on the wrong end of a class action suit saying, as a management, you were negligent in dealing with your cybersecurity responsibilities, you're able to say, well, no, here's the international standard that we applied. This is how we did it. We didn't just pretend we were doing it. We did it properly, thoroughly, and we have an annual certificate from an outside organization which audits our compliance with it, and we have a compliance certificate. So we have not been negligent. We have been right on top of how we go about dealing with cybersecurity and the cybersecurity rule. And one of the things that ISO 27000 requires is continual improvement. So it's not a stationary, done it once and forget about it. It's a continue to improve, continue to evolve to deal with the new risks as they appear. So it's a really useful certification standard from the perspective of continuing to be ahead of competitors in terms of how you demonstrate compliance with the regulation. So how do you go about it? What do you do? The reality is that, and we talk here from, as I said, some 15 to 20 years of experience helping organizations address cybersecurity. Most organizations already do some of what is required by ISO 27001. So the first step is to do a gap analysis to identify deficiencies and shortfalls. What's the gap between what it is that that ISO 27001 says you should be doing and what you are actually doing. And that will also identify specific and relevant legal requirements that might overlap. And so whether they're SEC rules or HIPAA or GLBA or whatever they are, you identify those as part of your gap analysis, because if you're going to build and manage an information security, a cybersecurity framework, you want to integrate all of the requirements so that you're not doing anything in silos. You're doing everything as a single joined up approach to cybersecurity. So you've identified the gaps, you make an implementation plan. This is how we're going to close the gaps. This is how we're going to improve the controls. It might involve rolling out technology or changing technology. It'll certainly involve training. It'll certainly involve changing the culture of many people inside the organization. But you have a plan, you roll it out, and then you have a combination of internal audit and external audit and certification. So it's a relatively straightforward process because, as I say, it recognizes that many organizations are already doing many of the things that ISO 27001 expects. You might not be doing it in as joined up a way or to the kind of standard that might be that you might find set out in 27001, but you'll be doing much of it. So the journey is potentially not that difficult. Our approach to clients really is built around the logic of a 9-step plan, and we do exactly what is logical. So we do a gap analysis, we put together a report, produces an implementation plan, we work with a Platform Cyber Comply, which has in it all of the functionality, and I'll touch on that shortly, to deal with risk assessment, incident response, and so on. And it has all the documentation that organizations need. And the use of Cyber Comply takes a lot of time, effort, and cost out of the process for our clients. And usually deploying through Cyber Comply includes consultant support, usually remotely delivered, and we help our clients make sure that they are doing all of the things that they need to be able to do, and not only doing it in a way that meets the requirements of ISO 27001, but tying it into the specific reporting requirements of the SEC cybersecurity regulation and HIPAA or anything else that is specifically relevant to your organization. We do this at a fixed price deal. We can do it on a bespoke basis for large organizations, but typically our approach is a very logical one built around our expertise, delivering peace of mind to you following a very well-established process with some solid technology in a platform that supports today and in the long run, because it enables you to take ownership of and manage your cybersecurity reg compliance in a very straightforward way. So the timeline to compliance, if you are not actually already genuinely compliant. So you could think of this as a timeline to demonstrating compliance. Starting point is to set the context, to define the scope of the organization, what's going to be included in the management system, what are we going to manage risk in, that's the key activities of the business. Is senior management committed? Do we have the right people in place who are able to drive the security program or understand what needs to happen? We build a plan, we do the risk assessment, we identify the key risks that management is concerned about, which ones can we tolerate, identify a set of controls and roll them out, make sure that throughout that process we are implementing skills and competences inside the organization, that the understanding of how to use the Cyber Comply platform enables people to respond to and deal with tasks on it as the implementation proceeds, make sure the controls are effective and that we see over time a reduction in identified risk because you should be measuring that. Evaluate performance, typically through a combination of the measurements built into the controls, the internal audit process, pulling all of that together to give at least an annual review of progress in terms of reducing information security risk, and using that information to drive improvements in how information security helps the organization achieve its overall objectives. A big part of the requirements of the SEC and the BIT, which is most obviously and immediately an issue, is dealing with incidents, the cyber incidents. And as I said, the reality is cyber incidents are going to happen. The opportunity to avoid it doesn't exist. You can do a lot of work to prevent cyber incidents happening, but you also have to do a lot of work to detect them when they happen or when they start happening, because the reality is attackers aren't going for you as an organization, they're going for a particular type of breach, a particular type of vulnerability, or a particular weakness in an individual to click on an email, and they work at scale and organizations are caught. So the starting point in building out the capability to respond effectively to an incident. Remember, you've got 4 days to report it, and in that time you've got to have responded well enough to have classified it, to work out how serious it is, does it need reporting or not, and work out what else you might need to do. So you need an incident response team. That's a logical starting point. Establish an incident response team. Control 524 is about incident security, information security, incident management planning and preparation, and recognizes, this control does, that the more time you put into planning, the less likely you are to find yourself dealing with an incident and be at a loss for what to do next. So designated roles for incident management and communication. Action points, defining roles and responsibilities within the incident response team, training the team for rapid and effective communication, both internally and externally as the disclosure requirements set out. You've got to identify and report. So you need a process for assessing information security events. Is it an event? Is it an incident? So controls 525 and onwards deal with information security events, incidents, identifying them, classifying them, working out how you go about reporting on those. and the action points therefore are applying that control, establishing criteria for particularly what constitutes a material breach. And a material breach you're going to think about in terms of impact on the number of data subjects, number of individuals whose data is compromised, or the amount of data which is exposed, or the period during which the organization's key systems are offline. You've got to set some criteria which are germane to the business and relevant in your social and business context that identify the materiality of the breach. Then you've got to respond. Identifying an incident is fine. You've got to respond to it. I-27001 controls 526 sets out steps for responding effectively to information security incidents. Having that process in place has you ready to demonstrate when you do have a real incident that you are able to comply with the cybersecurity rules requirements in those sense. So having appropriate, if you like, sets of response plans that are relevant to each of the different types of event, so that you've tested how to respond to a social engineering attack which downloads malware as distinct from a social engineering attack which sends in a ransomware attack, for instance. So you know how to deal with each of those. And then you've got to recover. So post-incident recovery, timely communication with shareholders, learning from information security incidents. A key part of the process, learning from information security incidents, is how you build into your future plans ways to avoid them happening again. Helps you improve resilience and helps you communicate effectively to not just the SEC, but also to stakeholders generally about how you are improving overall your cybersecurity posture. So thinking about the CyberComply platform, which I talked about, CyberComply is a GRC cybersecurity and privacy ecosystem. It's a cloud-based platform that enables you to access documentation for compliance with ISO 27001 and a number of other related standards. It enables you to access documentation that's relevant for meeting a number of regulatory requirements, HIPAA, GLBA, the SEC regs, and so on. And it's all included as in the single platform. You don't pay extra for any bit of it. You get access to everything within the platform, and the platform has the functionality, so it can deliver to you the risk assessment. It has a risk assessment wizard. It can deliver risk treatment plans. It can deliver control documentation. It can enable audits to happen. All of those are components in the ecosystem that is CyberComply. And you also, through CyberComply, get access to the full suite of related services that as an organization you might need, either at the point of implementing CyberComply or ISO 27001, or in terms of managing cybersecurity generally. And those services are accessible through the platform. They're built around the cyber defense in-depth model, and they are integrated so that you don't have to work out how to fit everything together, because they're fit together. So CyberComply is a platform that is an all-in-one solution. It's a single cloud-based platform that aligns with industry best practices and standards, enables you to quickly identify and treat data security risks before they become issues. You can map data flows, which is key for many regulations, also for mapping cross-border data flows, understanding where risks are in data flows so that you can deal with them, managing a cybersecurity, conducting a cybersecurity risk assessment, rolling out controls, applying controls, built-in governance processes, and there is a task manager which is designed to ensure that not only can you do all of that, but you can push tasks out to the whole organization in a way that enables you to effectively go, you need to do this, send out a task, have a reminder come up when you need it to, and you can forget about it. And you don't pay extra for everybody inside the organization to be given tasks. You simply drive them through the organization. So standard licensing brings company-wide read and respond to task access for free. You also get unlimited access to our product development team. There's a live chat. Our product development team knows an awful lot about the technicalities of what you're trying to do, so they can deal with technical issues, how to get best out of software, and quite often can deal with practical compliance issues as well. So, cyber compliant, you can click through to our US website to find out more. Automates SEC compliance. By the back end of this year, by the time it's required, you'll be able to automate uploading through XBRL mapping. Brings big cost savings. We have one client who said that they saved between $50,000 and $90,000 in rolling out ISO 27001 compliance because of the extra staff they might have had to take on, and they think they have cybersecurity working 75% faster than it would if they were using manual systems. So it's effective, it's versatile. Our documentation is updated centrally when there are changes to the regulation or the standards. That happens as a core part of the service. Our incident response module will have an API that enables it to talk to service desks. So cyber incidents that come into your service desk can automatically get pushed through and dealt with in a way that complies with how you should be managing and the kind of level of transparency you want about cyber incidents. And there's a real-time dashboard that enables management and the board to see exactly what's happening, how key risks are being managed, and gives you a dynamic overview of everything. So a platform worth looking at for exactly that reason, but also because there is a special offer on it. One price, all features. This is an offer which ends at the end of March. You'll be able to read about this on the slides when they go out, but you get a clear idea of what there is available there for you. The price will go up at the end of March. And as I said, bear in mind that all users, apart from the people who actually need to input documents and own risks, the people who have to respond or read, all of those are thrown in for free. So it's an outstanding good launch offer for cybersecurity and it's for cyber compliance in its current form. Really worthwhile having a look at, and that's certainly the view of a number of customers who have seen the way in which cyber compliance helped them make significant progress in terms of managing cyber and privacy risk inside their organization. Some of the clients' logos you can see on the screen right there, and I'd kind of finish by saying don't risk it, cyber compliant. Make your life easy, depend on our expertise for your peace of mind. And ladies and gentlemen, that's where I planned to end what I was saying. So just to reiterate, if you have questions, please do put them into the Q&A box, which is in the GoToWebinar panel. If you want to type any questions that you have in there, what I'll do is I'll share the question, I'll answer it, and any questions you've got, as I said, just do type them into that panel. So the first question is, what type of industry needs to comply with the SEC regulation with ISO 27001? The answer to that question is that every organization who's listed on a US stock exchange, so accelerated filers, registrants, all have to comply irrespective of what sector you are in. You have to comply with the SEC regulation, and ISO 27001 is sector agnostic, so it enables you to meet those compliance requirements whatever sector you are in. It's a standard which is written to be adaptable to every single commercial sector that there is, so you can use it in exactly the way that's appropriate for your sector. I hope that's a helpful answer to that particular question. Other questions, if you have them, please do put them into the Q&A box. If you just type them in there, then I will pick up the question, share it with you and answer it. I'll just give you a moment if you want to put questions in. So that either means that I asked and answered the questions that might be worthwhile. Are there any checkpoints to go through before any organization decides to introduce ISO governance? No, it's a straightforward decision. You can, as a business, say, how are we going to go about meeting the SEC regulations? Um, do we want to work it out for ourselves, or do we want to draw on international best practice? If you want to draw on international best practice, you can just simply go onto the web and you can find a copy of ISO 27001. It's an international standard. You can find it on our website. We distribute it, and you can read it. You can simply get on with it. It's then a management decision about how you go about using ISO 27001 to achieve your SEC compliance. What documents are necessary from companies outside the US? So if you are outside the US, if you're a foreign filer, if you have to comply with the SEC regs because you are listed in the US, irrespective of where you are in the world, you have to go through exactly the same requirements as a US company. So you have to report cybersecurity breaches material cybersecurity breaches within 48 hours. Um, uh, you have to have a cybersecurity governance framework in place. You have to do all of those things. Doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you're an SEC, if you are listed on a U.S. stock exchange, you have to do it. Therefore, the documentation is the same. You may have other requirements, legal requirements, depending on the jurisdiction you are elsewhere in the world. And ISO 27001 enables you to incorporate that into a single integrated management system. So what are the general rules for cybersecurity for India? The answer is it's the same approach as it is for anywhere else in the world. The general rules for cybersecurity are management commitment, because you need a budget, you need focus on what it is you're going to do. You need to do a risk assessment. You need to identify the assets that are at risk. You need to identify the business processes that are at risk. And you need, having done a risk assessment for all of those, to identify the threats and the vulnerabilities, what threats might exploit vulnerabilities, with what kind of impact on the asset, what the likelihood might be. That enables you to determine how serious the risk is, and from that you can determine controls. And ISO 27001 Annex A is a list of controls, and you select controls and you roll them out, you audit them, you audit compliance. So it's a very straightforward, very common approach to cybersecurity across the world. As a whole, it works in India, it works in the US, it works in Europe, it works wherever you may be. Kind of feels as though we've come to the end of questions, folks. So on that basis, I'm going to say thank you all for joining the webinar today. If we can help, there are a bunch of ways in which we can do that. We can help you with a certification-ready information security management system. We can help you with a whole host of training courses, cyber incident response. If you go on to our website, itgovernanceusa.com, or click through from any of these, they'll take you to the relevant pages on our website. We can help you. Give us a shout after the webinar, and we'll do whatever we can to help you make sure that you don't become a victim of the next cyber attack. And on that note, thank you all for being with us today, and I wish you a safe and secure rest of Thursday. Bye-bye.